Machiavelli didn't pen The Prince to amuse readers. His goal was to warn them. He delivered his message not through gentle language or idealistic visions, but with harsh, unyielding advice on perceiving the world as it truly is not as we wish it to be. Central to his caution is this reality. You either wield power or are shaped by it. You either command your circumstances or someone else does. Without grasping how power operates beneath appearances, or understanding how people conceal their true motives behind smiles, favors, and virtues, your kindness becomes a tool for others to exploit, and your morality becomes a chain by which they control you. Machiavelli saw this happen to kings, leaders, and citizens alike, those who trusted that honesty would shield them only to find it led to their downfall. Hence, he provided The Prince as a survival manual for the ambitious. Today, we summarize its core lessons into 9 laws, not philosophies, or theories but rules that, when broken, will cost you your power, clarity, and ultimately your freedom. He famously wrote, "It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities. It is necessary to seem to have them." People take comfort in kindness, mercy, and generosity. Yet Machiavelli observed the fate of rulers who genuinely lived by these traits. They were exploited, betrayed, and overthrown. Therefore, his advice is stark. Be whatever you must, ruthless, cruel, calculating, but always don the mask of virtue. If others believe you are generous, they will overlook your greed. If they see you as kind, betrayal won't be expected. If they think you are merciful, they won't prepare for your revenge. To adopt Machiavellian thinking is to realize that your reputation serves as armor, while reality is your weapon. Don't waste effort trying to be good to everyone. Instead, appear virtuous to those observing and take necessary actions behind the scenes. This is where many falter. Machiavelli declared, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Why? Because love depends on expectations, and when disappointed, love can turn to hatred. Fear, however, runs deeper. Those who fear you watch their words, plot less boldly, and believe betrayal will cost them more than silence. To think like Machiavelli isn't to become a tyrant, but to understand that fear is a steadier foundation than affection. Love is fickle. Fear lasts. Yet there is a balance. Be feared, but not hated. A prince must inspire fear in a way that if love is not gained, hatred is avoided. Fear is enforced through consequences, never chaos, humiliation, or random violence. Actions must be controlled, measured, and predictable. People should think, "I would never dare betray him, but I still respect him." Quote, in The Prince, Machiavelli also warns that even the most loyal soldiers can become enemies when ambition drowns out loyalty. He cautions that princes who rise too quickly often fall just as swiftly, because people often place their trust in the hands that lifted them rather than the ones sharpening blades behind their backs. Anyone who builds their power on the support of the public must be cautious with their loyalty. So what does that look like in the real world? It means that today's praise doesn't ensure tomorrow's protection. It means someone fighting on your behalf might only be doing so because it serves their own interest. It means the person smiling at your achievements might already be counting the days until your downfall. To adopt Machiavellian thinking is to trust with boundaries. It's not about becoming paranoid, it's about becoming observant. You don't assume betrayal, but you prepare for it discreetly and strategically. Because when it arrives, you won't need to react. You'll already be in position. This is where Machiavelli is both most controversial and most candid. He argues that a prince who always adheres to moral principles will be undone by those who don't. A man determined to act solely in accordance with his virtues will quickly encounter what destroys him. In a world rife with deception, consider this. If your adversaries are prepared to lie, cheat, and steal, and you refuse to, then your defeat is all but certain. Thinking like Machiavelli doesn't mean discarding all morality. It means recognizing when it must be set aside. The ends justify the means. If the survival of your mission, your family, or your purpose demands actions others might deem wrong, you take them. because morality without power is just ornamentation, and Machiavelli never wore ornaments. We are now exploring the mind of a man who knew how to win wars without ever unsheathing a sword, who didn't write about leadership for its own sake, but about cold, strategic survival. Every time you choose peace over power, generosity over foresight, or vulnerability over precision, someone is watching. And Machiavelli's mind was designed to notice that. He didn't just study rulers, she studied their falls. And their ruin wasn't always dramatic, it often stemmed from a single misplaced virtue, a single strength used too frequently, or the assumption that gratitude would last forever. These were the laws ignored by kings who thought applause made them invincible. It's a paradox that most leaders still fail to grasp. Machiavelli warned, "A prince who is generous will soon exhaust his resources and be forced to burden his people, which brings hatred." It sounds absurd. Be generous and lose the people's favor? Yes. Here's why. Once you give, it becomes expected. When you stoop even momentarily, you're perceived as miserly. Worse still, generosity attracts opportunists, not loyalty. Machiavelli understood this psychological trap well. People remember what you no longer give more vividly than what you once gave. So what did he recommend? It's better to earn a reputation for stinginess, because the resentment that comes from frugality is far weaker than the hatred born from overtaxation to support ongoing generosity. Let that settle in. It's not about never giving. It's about never giving in a way that binds you. You give to exert influence, not to be admired. To buy time, not affection. To gain leverage, not dependence. Every leader craves praise. Every ruler longs to be adored. But Machiavelli viewed flattery not as admiration, but as a sign of where you're blind. The best way to defend yourself against flattery, he argued, is to make it clear that truth doesn't offend you. His warning wasn't aimed at the flatterer, it was aimed at you, the one who wants to believe them. If someone always agrees with you, they're seeking something. If they laugh too loudly at your jokes, they're guarding their position. If they heap praise on your intellect, they're likely pushing their own agenda. To think in Machiavellian terms is to distrust total agreement, to welcome opposition, and to reward truth when it's uncomfortable. A leader who can't handle honesty will fall victim to illusion, and those illusions are always sold by flatterers smiling on the outside, hiding a knife underneath. Indecision is the slowest route to death and power. But recklessness is just as lethal. Machiavelli's answer: hesitate within, act boldly without. A prince must appear resolute, even if he is unsure. People follow confidence, not necessarily truth. What matters is certainty. So, what does that look like? You buy time quietly but present firmness to the world. You explore different paths in private but speak as though your direction is firm. You may wrestle with doubts inside, but your public stance must be unwavering. This is why Machiavelli admired Cesare Borgia. He planned silently, acted decisively, and never apologized. Because once your uncertainty is exposed, others will try to steer you, and their guidance will serve their needs, not yours. Machiavelli wrote, "The best fortress is to be found in the love of the people. For even with a fortress, you may still be hated and alone." Yet he also claimed, "Fear is safer than love." Is this a contradiction? No, it's a design. Fear protects you from enemies. Love, or more precisely, respect, grounds your support. You cannot survive on love alone, but you also cannot afford to be hated by the public. He observed rulers who withdrew into castles, believing they were secure, only to be starved, betrayed, or isolated. Even the strongest fortress fails when those outside no longer care if you live or die. That's why your true fortress must be built in minds. Shape your public image. Be known for strength, admired for composure. Let the elite fear your presence, but let the masses remember you with respect. That's how you outlast revolutions. Machiavelli saw life as governed by two forces: virtù and fortuna. Virtù is your inner strength, planning, boldness, adaptability. Fortuna is external luck, chaos, unpredictability. He believed those who rely on fortune are weak, while those who command through virtue shape their fate. It's better to act boldly than cautiously because Fortuna, he said, is like a woman and, if you wish to master her, you must strike decisively. A violent metaphor. Yes, but its meaning is blunt. Don't wait. If you want the world to hand you power, you can't wait. You have to take it, mold it, and assert your vision even in the face of uncertainty. And when failure comes, you don't curse your fate, you adapt, grow sharper, and return stronger. Machiavelli didn't revere destiny. He positioned himself as inevitable. And so can you. By now, it's clear. Machiavelli didn't intend for you to live in fear. He wanted you to become unshakable. But here's the trade-off. Once you start seeing the world this way, you begin seeing through people. You start detecting the deception behind their praise, the strategy behind their kindness, the weakness behind their smiles. For many, this clarity becomes a burden. Some become paranoid, trapped in suspicion. Others turn arrogant, overreaching until power recoils on them. Machiavelli foresaw both outcomes. He warned, a prince who relies entirely on fortune will fall when fortune changes. And in real life, that's the person who sticks to old strategies long after they've lost their edge. The one who applies yesterday's playbook to today's terrain, without adjusting. They become so attached to their past success that they stop evolving. Machiavelli observed that leaders didn't fall from weakness, they fell from rigidity. They were too loyal to the methods that once brought victory and too blind to notice when the rules of the game had shifted. To think like Machiavelli is to know when to let go of what no longer works. Your allegiance isn't to routine, doctrine, or belief, it's to results. Anything else can be discarded. And this mindset is both subtle and extremely potent. Machiavellian thinkers don't just analyze the world, they analyze themselves within it. While others argue, they ask, who stands to gain from this conflict? While others celebrate, they wonder, whose ego is inflating and whose influence is fading? While others take offense, they pause and ask, what's this person trying to trigger in me? That ability to live within and above the moment is what grants them control. They don't just experience, they observe, calculate, and position. It's not detachment, it's deliberate awareness. Power gravitates to those who see the entire board, while others are fixated on their own square. If you're perceived as a threat, others build defenses. If you're seen as a rival, they scheme. If you're placed above them, they grow resentful. So, don't let them perceive it. Machiavelli never instructed rulers to be invisible, he taught them to be unthreatening, to blend in, to reflect what others expect. Let them misjudge you, underestimate you, assume you're ordinary. That way, when the decisive moment arrives, your blow will land before they even see it coming. To think like Machiavelli is to ensure your victory is inevitable before anyone realizes you are playing. Every word you utter gives away information. People don't just listen to what you say, they dissect how you say it, why you say it, and most importantly, what it reveals about what you want. To a Machiavellian thinker, most people speak far too often. They fill silence out of discomfort. Over-explain to appear sincere. And vent in the hope of seeming powerful. At every unnecessary word offers your opponent a weapon. A wise ruler never discloses his intentions. You don't have to lie, you simply don't have to explain. Keep your demeanor calm, your words concise, your silence unnerving, and let others expose themselves as they attempt to interpret you. Machiavellian relationships aren't built on sentiment but on purpose. That doesn't mean you lack empathy, it means your empathy is calculated, deliberate, and effective. You categorize people into 3 roles. Levers who extend your influence. Lenses who provide insight you lack. And liabilities who deplete your energy, clarity, or control. Once you see clearly who belongs where, you adjust. Levers are respected but kept at a safe distance. Lenses are valued but never idolized. Liabilities are removed swiftly and without remorse. Machiavelli knew everyone around you is either sharpening your edge or dulling it. To many, this sounds callous, even cruel. But that's because they confuse emotional control with emotional absence. Machiavelli never said to silence your emotions, she said to control what they do to you. You can feel insulted and still remain composed. You can feel wounded and still play the long game. You can feel overjoyed and still keep your focus. A prince must be prepared to act against mercy, faith, humanity, openness, and even religion when necessary. The key word is when necessary, not instinctively, not perpetually, and certainly not cruelly, but when the stakes demand it. To think like Machiavelli is to experience your emotions fully, but choose when and how the world sees them. That's not indifference, it's emotional discipline. Once you've internalized his laws, once you've learned to move with purpose, speak selectively, and act with intention, one final challenge remains. How do you hold on to power without letting it take hold of you? This is what most people miss. Machiavellian thinking isn't just about dominating others. It's also about mastering yourself. You must examine yourself with the same scrutiny you apply to others. Dissect your own motives, actions, and blind spots with unwavering honesty. The last law Machiavelli lived, but never openly wrote, is this: if you cannot govern yourself, nothing else you govern will endure. If you crave power, start with your responses. When insulted, do you lash out? When complimented, do you grow complacent? When tested, do you crave approval or react impulsively? The Prince Machiavelli imagined wasn't unshaken by pressure, he was forged by it. He had to learn how not to be good and when to use that knowledge wisely. You don't act out of impulse, you respond by intention. You don't let emotions define your presence, you let strategy shape it. A true prince never loses control, he lets it slip just enough to lure his opponent in, then reclaims it at the exact moment their guard drops. The more others understand your mind, the easier it becomes for them to predict you, and the more predictable you are, the more easily you're cornered. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. That's why he cautioned against rulers who are too open-hearted. They reveal too much. Their dreams, their justifications, their fierce, and in doing so, they hand others a roadmap to manipulate them. So how do you escape that fate? You become, in Machiavelli's words, intellectually opaque. You don't disclose your motivations, only your actions. You let others speculate on your intentions while you're already 2 moves ahead. You make yourself difficult to define. Be unreadable. Be elusive. Be the kind of mind that forces others to fill in the blanks with their own assumptions that you've anticipated. That's when unpredictability becomes invisibility. Here's the danger of misreading Machiavelli. People assume power means domination, noise, and control. But authentic Machiavellianism isn't about acting powerful, it's about no longer needing to perform power. It's not about yelling louder. It's about creating a presence so potent that your silence causes more disruption than any outburst. It's not about frequent punishment, it's about deploying it so effectively that the idea of it maintains order for you. True power resides in restraint. It hides within simplicity. It listens before it speaks and fades before the dust settles. So if you feel the urge to prove yourself, stop. The prince doesn't prove, he orchestrates. He stays behind the curtain, allowing perception to carry weight while the reality stays in his grasp. But here lies the final trap. Once you master these principles, you may begin to apply them indiscriminately. Every interaction becomes a test. Every relationship turns into a transaction. Every space feels like a battlefield. And gradually, your mind becomes a prison of suspicion. Machiavelli never told you to treat everyone as a threat, told you to know who is, and act accordingly. Use tests with care. Use fear with precision. Use deception only when the truth would cost you everything. The Machiavellian mind isn't a wild sword, it's a surgical needle. Sharp, silent, intentional. Only weak leaders use force carelessly. Strong leaders choose exactly when to strike and let others wonder why they did. In the end, Machiavelli wasn't teaching you how to rule others for amusement, was teaching you how to never be ruled again. He didn't trust naive virtue, charming words, or even his own instincts fully, because power isn't about being ruthless. It's about being untouchable in a world where collapse is constant. To think like Machiavelli is to enter a room and instantly see who's performing, who's faking, who's observing, and who's watching you as carefully as you're watching them. That's not paranoia, it's awareness. And once you've built it, you never walk the same again. No more shrinking back when kindness is misused. Just a clear head, a quiet presence, and a game so subtle no one realizes it's being played until it's already over. That's Machiavellian thought, not to mimic a prince, but to become the silent power that governs the room without ever raising your voice.